I have been making jewelry for about 4 decades, if you cut it off at COVID, I guess. And I've been making stories the subject of my work, which was suggested to me by a friend of mine, Charles Luce, years ago. And I pursued it because it was easy for me. I had always made things that had a narrative. Even the first poster contest I was in, it was about paint up, clean up, fix up week. And I had the hedgehog, it was in the 5th grade, and the hedgehog was burying the tin cans in the dirt. And he had a waistcoat on and he had a hat on. And I came home from school. I was in the 5th grade, came home from school on a Friday night, and my parents were always very receptive to what I was about, even though I was an odd kid, I think. And I told them what I was going to do. And Mom said to Dad, well, Bill, don't you think that's a good idea? And he said, of course, yes. And I always felt like they condoned everything I got in my head. And that was a real gift, So anyhow, in this book, there are about 58 images, and I made about 700 in my lifetime, and I'm not done yet, although I'm not as fast as I used to be. So I could pull all-nighters, and I did it on the weekends when I was teaching, and it wasn't comfortable, I'll put it that way, but I made it work. So anyhow, this piece is on the cover of my book, and I was real thrilled when Damian Skinner, who's one of the authors, he's from New Zealand, and he said he wanted that on the cover. And then on the back is a piece that I made about Princess Di and all the royal family not sharing their pearls of wisdom in tea bags. And I folded tea bags out of stainless steel. So I like the juxtaposition of a Northwest piece with a piece that was about the world, because I was in the world. I was noticing things, but I lived in the Northwest, and that was still, I couldn't help but make things about boats and water and logs and tools and all these things, So anyhow, this was made going down to the ferry dock at West Seattle one afternoon, and the ferry was having trouble coming from Harper. I think it's Harper. And I was waiting, and they said it'd be 2 hours. So I went down on the beach and started collecting things. So these are all found objects. I assembled them in the back of my Subaru on this striped cloth I had in the back. And I was kind of excited about I had a deadline, I have to admit. And so I wanted to get home and start making it. And so it is owned by the Museum of Fine Art in Houston. It's in a collection there. It's not working. Uh-oh. Okay, this one is called Ice Cargo, and it was prompted by Duchamp and playing with ready-mades. And here the sled has a cargo of ice cubes rather than the wood, hopefully arresting the eye of the viewer. I was always trying to get the attention of somebody by wearing a realistic item, but kind of changing it up a little bit. I made a number of sled pieces, intrigued by the design of sleds from the far north. And I had a great book that I think my aunt gave it to me, and it was by Paul, I think it was by Paul Theory, the guy who built Ron Ho's house. And he and his wife had a collection. And then this one is another sled made out of bone. And in the early days, I did Bellevue Arts and Crafts Fair, and I made a lot of pieces out of bone because I wanted to have ivory, but I didn't have any. So I just latched this piece together because one of my students did a movie called Bone Chillin', And then Horace Luke, who's one of my former students, he loved it right away. He said, "Ha ha ha! I want that piece." And I thought, okay, well, you can have it. It's I thought nobody would like it, but I had fun making the icicle, and I really had fun constructing the sled. And I had to get those bone, the bone things they make books with. I went down to this store on 23rd and got those bones. I don't know what you call them. They're for envelopes and things. You know what I'm talking about, maybe. Chris doesn't. And I was inspired by the complications implicit in a cold winter. Here I was influenced by the Eskimo sleds, the necessity of wood, and either an axe or a cross saw. And the cross saw in the back has teeth on it, but it won't hit the neck. The neck is the smooth part of the cross saw. And so everybody always looks, I actually wore this downtown in Seattle, and a lot of people came up and admired it. So I think it works. This one, I went to the Hat and the Heart in the Valley, oh, you don't know anything about Seattle. I'm looking at Chris. He doesn't know anything about Seattle. Anyhow, I got this cow at the Hat and the Heart, and I thought it was really kind of cool. And it's a bull, really. And so I made, how it's either a bear market or a bull market. And I was trying to make sense of the larger financial game of gain or loss. And since I only use basic math, I still believe the bottom line with the numbers is simply just do arithmetic, add and subtract. That does it. I think that's all you really need. And then on the advent of recycling, being at Ramona's house and seeing tin cans in her kitchen in a box with all her beads and all her jewelry stuff, suddenly I thought, what a great idea. Kick the can. And I also had a little problem with one of the people that writes a column every once in a while in the Seattle paper, and I won't mention the name, but I put, it is called to kick the can, and one of them says gas on it. So maybe you get it. I thought the cans were beautiful, and by using the rolling mill, calibrations for wire to imprint the sides of the can and a steel wire template to imprint the bottom of each one, I was convinced. I'm sure that I was recalling Andy Warhol's Campbell soup can, Prince, and Jasper Johns beer can sculptures, allowing me to carry through. I was also responding to a critical critique that was given to me. And one of the cans has the word, as I said, gas on it. So that's that. This one is actually, I don't know where this piece is. And I thought this was a real beauty. And I went into the Burke Museum and I saw the Anne Hamilton exhibit. And, she had all these shelves with candles on them and yellow canaries flying around in the gallery. And then locker tabs on the floor. And they click, clicked. It was a beautiful room, just so beautiful. She always made things with a lot of found stuff. And, I said that the crunchy sound that the space was making when you walked. And that my collar of articulated pieces was motivated by loving the old locker tabs that I knew of and saw used in Ramona's jewelry. The numbers were stamped into the segments with some large number stamps that Ramona had given me. Chain mail linked the whole thing together and was fastened with a miniature fabricated lock. Nothing I make happens very fast. It's very slow work, and I'm kind of slow. So it kind of goes with me, And then here's the one I was talking about, the Royal Brouhaha in 1996. And what's it about the royal family and politics? I chose tea bags with pearls of wisdom enclosed, separate but not shared by the numerous members of the royal entourage. The tea tags were tangled, just as the politics of sharing palaces and countries. Polite as they may appear to be about doing their business as usual, I made this piece thinking about Princess Di in 1994, prior to her untimely death in 96. It began with stainless steel mesh that could be folded into tea bags. The effect of repeating an image and the consequence of them rubbing up against each other made them sexy and luscious around the neck. I had always admired the large ruffs that adorned the Dutch paintings of Vermeer and saw this as my moment to reinvent the ruff. By inventing a carrier system to hold all the tea bags with strings and tags, it was a very hard piece to make and kept me focused. I love the piece. It is fun to wear and feels like a party, and it really does. There are two of those necklaces. Craziness. This one is called Mobetta in '89, inspired by my father mowing the lawn in suburbia, fully dressed in a suit, tie, and hat, a real gentleman. This piece was made to sit on the wearer's shoulder. And I had thought about putting some fake grass underneath it, and I couldn't. I just thought it looks good the way it is. So I quit and I turned it in. And it was a success in the show. It was at the Bellevue Art Museum. The Rake's Progress 2002. I am a passionate gardener, and I love the tools of the trade. Rakes come in many different forms depending on use. I chose this title from looking at David Hockney's rendition of stage sets for William Hogarth's The Rake's Progress. So I called it The Rake's Progress. Play on words. Okay. Wheelbarrows are such important pieces of yard transportation. They give you a way to move things around and make the impossible possible. My family always worked in our yard. My grandfather, who was the 13th child of an Oregon settler family with a 178-acre land claim in the Willamette Valley, taught me a lot about planting and harvesting vegetables and fruits. Farming was in his genes. His garden in Milwaukee, Oregon was orderly, filled with wonderful vegetables and fruit and flowers. As kids, my sister and I were busy with garden chores. We spent time in the summer and fall months harvesting with planting in the spring. It was a lot of fun. And my grandma would always come out and say, "Oh, Ray!" She was always mad at him. "Oh, Ray!" It was like with Ron Ho. "Oh, Ron!" Obnoxious sometimes. Okay, Pathmaker 2004. Always interested in gardens and design, I started looking at my tools that I used for inspiration. This piece is fabricated using a piece of oak from the floorboards in my family house and beach pebbles from the Oregon coast. So I was really looking at my life and everything here as being really precious. My no rules applied. It is my true form of operation. It is with no rules applied. I follow my mind's eye when making compositional determinations, moving the parts around and fastening parts together until the parts fall into place. This piece was made and dismantled twice until it reached its present form. It is light in weight, moves well, and is worth a second, third, and fourth, and forever examination. Success. It looks kind of precious. It doesn't weigh anything. It's made out of aluminum. And one of Karen Lorene's workers, one of her gallery ladies bought it. And every time she wears it, I always think, oh, I wish I had that piece. It's really very nice. And I had 2 pictures taken of it during the process of making it because I thought I had to be done. And then I went back into it. Okay, this is double zipper heads in 2004. It's called Zip. I found it at a Portland store called Scrap, a wonderful source of unused, repurposed material for teachers and artists. The real surprise is that this piece is really quite elegant looking. It looks like gold. It really does. And I learned that from looking at a piece that it was an ammo case that Jean Jungle Ward used to wear, and I wanted it was from Afghanistan, and I wanted it because it looked like gold. Uh-oh, where's the image? Oh, okay. Sorry. This is Bubble Tea 2005. After receiving a gift from my former student Horace Luke on his return from his birthplace, Hong Kong, I made this piece, Tea Time, Abacuses, Red, Green, and How to Make a Cup of Tea. I named it Bubble Tea. That had just become popular. I'm wondering if that was Horace on the phone. Okay, so here we are. Oh yeah, I already said that. Okay. Oh, that's the back. Okay, this one gives the instructions on how to make a proper cup of tea. That was on the back of it. And It's About Time, 2005. And Ramona came down to visit me in Portland to see my new house. She felt awful. But she said, Laurie wanted me to see her house. And, you got to admire that lady for feeling terrible and coming down to Portland. I don't know how she did it. And we went exploring and found these discarded clock gears at the Bernadette Brew in the Pearl District. The pieces took on more meaning, having been approved by Ramona's eye and touch. I laid it out and said, what do you think? She said, I think it looks good. So that was it, She knew. And then this one, No, Yes, 2008. With all the rhetoric surrounding the election in 2008, I realized the audacity of simply two choices, no or yes. And there is a rivet that I didn't do very well at the end. I thought it looked like the bad Chad that they had in one of the elections. I thought, okay, that works. And I made these letters out of wood. And I don't know if you've gotten the gist, but I only do things that are about America. I don't do, well, except for Princess Di. And that, to me, she was younger than I am, but it was very, we watched her wedding. It was very, it was a love story. I had to watch it, And this one's called Behind the Eight Ball, 2008. And I found this printing plate in the scraps at the Multnomah Art Center jewelry studio. I seized the piece, already thinking about the 8-ball idea and my Corbusier 8 stencil. Enthusiastic about my idea and intrigued by making a ball out of various metals, marriage and metal technique, I knew that the cast monkey would be moving the ball forward. And I had fun making this piece. I liked it in the end a lot. Somebody else did too. And this one is the iconic steel bridge in Portland, Oregon. And if you look in my book, the lady who bought this, she's very important in New York City as a person. I think her name is Sar. I'm going to have Chris look it up in here. Anyhow, I looked up what she does for a living, and she's human rights and all those, important things that we have to. Her name is Sarah Jane. Oh, that's wrong. Oh dear. Oh, it's in the wrong collection. I won't say it then right now. Okay. That's weird. Okay. anyhow, this lady in New York bought it at Julie's on Madison Avenue, and I didn't know. I put pulleys in it. It doesn't have the railroad layer because it wasn't going to work. It works the way it is, but it was bought immediately. So I thought I was nuts when I did it, but it was inspired by the vertical lift bridge that has 2 levels controlled by pulleys. And I bought the pulleys at my local, you know, it, oh, honestly, oh, it's my sister. Um, it was at my local, I'm sorry, I always get upset when my sister calls. I have to call her back. Anyhow, it's as a child, I was fascinated by the machinery house on the top of the bridge, how the bridge worked, and curious who lived there. That's it. Okay, so this one, my grandfather had this envelope, and I made, it was finding an old engraved invoice envelope by my grandfather from a Willamette tent and awning. Inspiration repurposed our old, heavy, smelly tent into a longer lasting memory of old time fun in the great outdoors. We would put this thing up, and it was really hard, and it smelled really bad because it never had been used for years, but we made my dad help us. And then whether or not, I had to make the icon accessory of the Northwest that celebrates our unique weather pattern. This piece opens and closes. I left the stays unsheathed because the structure is so beautiful to look at. And Rolling Rock 2008, this brooch employed a found object given to me by Ramona Solberg, that being the copper piece that goes across the top. She used a piece like this in one of her necklaces. Here I was trying to learn how to pierce a hole in a rock using a drill bit that didn't work, but I liked the polka dot effect. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't read how to do it. I just started trying things, and that's the way I am. And then this one, I knew how to do it. And this is influenced by, you know, the Asian influence and the calligraphy and the rocks kind of placing themselves on the basalt stones washing up on the shore. Going to the beach is a quick trip from Portland. So these rocks took on a new role in my pieces, and I learned how to drill a rock with a special bit. So steel dividers, the neck piece was the last piece I made in my Seattle studio for a show at the Cherry in the fall of 2001 before moving to Portland, Oregon. I found these steel dividers in an antique store in the Green Lake area of Seattle. They were from England, and I thought they were so beautiful and strong. And though divided each by their design, they seemed to need to be together. Possibly a metaphor for my feelings regarding going back to my home in Portland and leaving my old home, Seattle. Both sides, going down to the light rail yard down by the river here in Portland, 2009, the miscellaneous parts were obtained from a cash register given to me and mounted on the steel rounds from a rail yard at the Willamette River. The O stencil is by Corbusier, My Ode to Oregon. I was getting steel rails so I could teach forging to my students. And here's the back side of it. So it has 2 sides, and I love the collage of the pieces on the back side. But the other side's quiet, which is kind of nice. Import export. This piece, I still don't like the photo of it because there is a pitchfork on the end on the right-hand side. And it was a play again on dealing with the irony of made in China. And I turned the idea around by exporting bamboo. There is a pitchfork on the side to lift the bamboo like straw. It's a really kind of it's a interesting piece. This one, Fiddling Around, is a ring, as you can see. And it was because my dad played the violin in the Portland Symphony. And I love that volute on a violin. And I had it hung on the wall and especially enjoyed looking at the scroll at the end and the tuning pegs. Making a volute was a compelling factor in this construction because I am really challenged by left and right. I always think, or upside, the front side and the back side. I think, like right now, I'm working on a piece that I have to keep thinking about the back side, and I'm on the front side, and then I have to turn it over and look at it, and it goes, you get crazy. You really do. And then this is my beaver tooth bracelet, which is really a classic of mine. And the Oregon State animal by the 1969 legislature is the American beaver. As an Oregonian, I made this bracelet originally in '76 from a beaver tooth that my then boyfriend, James Elliott Sinding, found on a hiking trail. And I was moved again by love. I began creating this rather simple, clean design that was in my head and on a napkin at my jeweler's bench. I had round curved tubing from Myron Toback in New York City, and that was meant for bracelets and some gauge 1 sterling square rod for the bracelet's bottom element. As usual, I bent the rules, used the stock material to create my conceived bracelet form. The clasp is hidden by using a pin that is in the tubing on one side and capped on the other side over the end element. It is a difficult piece to make with a lot of default in the process. It is my classic piece that I wear every day and have fabricated at least 5 or 7 times. And I have a whole bunch of them sitting on my bench right now that are rejects. But a lot of people look at them and say, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? And I go, it's got things wrong. So, and then this ring was made with a steel gate latch that one of my students, Peter DeBuz, gave me. And I just thought, again, it was beautiful. And it reminded me of the beaver bracelet. And so I cut it off and made a ring with it. And I offered it for a wedding ring to David French, but he didn't take me up on it. I still think he should have. Oh, back. This is a 1 screw ring that it was purchased by, it's in the book. The guy over there in Ballard. He had that great gift shop and he makes jewelry himself. And I hate that I'm forgetting his name. Chris is going through the book rapidly trying to find it. He can't find it. It's in the back, I think. Anyhow, he bought it for his boyfriend because he figured it was just 1 screw that they needed and that was it, So I thought that was kind of cute. And then this one's my 2 screw ring because I found, it's Curtis Steiner. And this one, the 2 screw, was bought by somebody who was also getting a wedding ring. And I found this in the shop at school on the floor, made a sterling band that fit into the opening and secured it by upsetting the edges. It was purchased by a client as a wedding band they apparently related to my play with words and image. This one is from one of my grandfather's tools. And again, I kept thinking about the beaver bracelet. And this was part of a tool set. And there was Apex on it, which was the brand. Still haven't done anything with Apex. And I will sometime. And the special, I thought it would appeal. And I really kind of solved this one fairly. I was kind of crazy about it. I didn't know how I could do it, but I did solved the hinges and I solved the class by just going out into nowhere land and letting I think I oftentimes solve things when I wake up in the morning. And see, I said here that this piece was preceded by the beaver tooth bracelet, was a true brainstorm throughout the process. The biggest breakthrough was formulating the class while I drove down the hill to Portland through Forest Park. Boom! And that's exactly how it happened. And I really, that's the way it happens with me. I don't know what I'm doing a lot of the time, but I get there. And also, the bigger the problem, the more I get there. And this one I made for Gloria Krause using found objects from her husband, Carl Krause. Log rule is the way you calculate the board feet in a tree. The axe with the ebony handle and the one with the red handle was made of pewter by some loggers who came to cut trees down around Gloria's house in Olympia after it burned down and had to be rebuilt. I was honored to make this piece for Gloria and was able to deliver it to her before her death in 2011. She had an indomitable spirit and was not only attractive, but as an artist who made amazing hooked contemporary rugs. She was something else. She was a great lady. And anyhow, it's in the Tacoma Art Museum. This one, Monkey Business at the Ho Hum Cafe. And I know that a lot of people will think this is a Ron Ho piece, but I originally made some chairs that were in the cafe, and he came in my room and my kids were making chairs out of wire. And so I had to kind of get back at him, I have to admit. And so I made this Ho Hum Cafe with a monkey in it. And I just figured I'm the monkey who's making monkey business on Ho Ho, but yeah. Did I screw something up? Okay. Anyhow, I made a necklace called Cubist Cafe, thinking about San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury, the Summer of Love, 69, coffee cantata, jazz, and the Cubist perspective. And this one, I always wanted to make a Chinese restaurant, having frequented Thai Tongue in the International District, Seattle, many years ago, late at night with my then boyfriend. Maybe it was the boyfriend or truly the mystery of a Chinese restaurant late at night, the roasted duck hanging in the window, not knowing what could be lurking behind the bamboo screens or under the tables. The incomplete story, the scene, the props, a real or imagined circumstance, worn like a sandwich board. But it's wearable. It's wearable. And here it is, a close up. Okay, this one is a bracelet that Ramona made because I think she did make a Charles Laloma copy. And the story is that she was speeding along down there on Martin Luther King Way. And she got pulled over by a policeman, and he noticed her bracelet, and he said, "Is that a Charles Laloma?" She said, "No, I made it." And he said, oh, he was very impressed. So she had started another one, but she never finished it. So I took my bone and I took one of my Oregon Coast rocks, and then I finished the project. It wasn't soldered completely, so I soldered it, and so I finished it, and I call it Full Circle because her stamp, I had one of her stamps. I only had one, and I should have left it. I should have kept it to put on this necklace I have that she made, but I didn't. So it's my loss. I do have a real Ramona Solberg necklace. And so anyhow, so it's Full Circle. It's Oregon, it's me, it's Ramona, and the bone that I started out with in the beginning. And then this is I Spy 2014. And the crows were always at school in the dumpsters, and they were the only ones who ever knew what I wore to school. In fact, I'd talk to them when I left. I'd say, "How do you think I look today? Do I look pretty good, Mr. Crow?" And they go, "Caw, caw, caw," And anyhow, I wrote a poem, and the I spy is in the sky, the summit has convened, a real scene within the greens, dressed in black, raven or crow, they see that they see, they fly, they remember faces, they're in places, always around on the schoolyard dumpster, perched in trees, always talking, the caw-caw of chatter, chatter, swoop and fly, that is the why. They, the observers, flying in and flying out, inhabiting my world without a doubt. And most people say that I should forget about being a poet, so don't worry about it. I'm not going to be a poet. And then these are more crows, the observer, the inspector, the prankster, in 2018. And in Native American cultures, the blackbird is a bringer of messages. While the message could be bad, it is normally an auspicious message. The crow or blackbird may have a reputation in Native American cultures as a trickster, but they are not bad at heart, and we all know that. And then my Ferris wheel, I was really trying to make, I have a Ferris wheel necklace that I haven't finished. That is pretty great, but I've got to finish it. And this is when Seattle got their Ferris wheel. I mean, I was possessed trying to make, without doing it properly, a circle where it functioned. And, when you don't do things right, it's really hard if it's symmetric. This was really hard, and it does spin. So I did it, but oh my gosh, if I'd only do things right, but I don't. And she's got a ticket to ride. This was an endeavor as a child. Oh, it's Horace. He's calling me. This was an endeavor as a child, having read The Little Engine That Could, as illustrated children's book that was first published in the United States in 1930 by Platt and Monk. And the story is used to teach children the value of optimism and hard work. As an artist, a teacher, I believe in these principles, and it was just that made me make this piece with all its cars and pieces. I thought I could. For me, this moving articulated object declares that a woman can write her own ticket in America. Trains connect us to a larger world, and in that way, this icon from our history becomes alive again as a wearable object, out to have another ride. And I had hoped Hillary would get the election, but as you know, she did not. We had Mr. Trump, so that's the way it goes. And then this political theater, this is a thriller, but it's always the same fight, I mean, so far we just have two parties. Who knows? It might change, but perennially, the fight goes on in politics with the main two characters on stage as the crowd looks on reacting to the daily performance. I use my mother's hemming ruler as a reminder of the term limits to the newly elected administration in Washington, and in addition, use mom's pinking shears to cut bezels to hold the plexiglass pendants strung on a snake chain. Definitely influenced by Jasper Johns, his American flag obsession. I had fun etching that American flag. It doesn't have the right number of stripes or stars, but I did my best. And then the crowd down below, there you get to see it. And I love those little red X's. They don't totally function. I'd like to do it again and make it function. This was commissioned by Lou Grata for Sandy, his wife, as a gift. The narrative goes like this. Lou is Tanqueray 10 gin bottle, and Sandy is the Windex bottle. The bottles are balanced on a teeter-totter that sits on a half-round sphere of white plexiglass, imitating the architecture of their Richard Meyer house with its white interior and exterior. The evening begins with a glass of gin. The olive sits at the front of the stage as the shared reward. Windex, her product of choice. Sandy keeps a clean house. Standing vigil overhead are the broom and the paper towels. And I called this piece, oh, I can't even read it. Good, Clean Fun, 217. There we go. And it was fun to make. And then this one I'm putting in at the end. It's a repeat. It's in the first part too, but this defied logic when I started it. And usually my pieces do. They defy logic and I just have to go for it. And I would come down and look at this on my table and I think, how can I put all these pieces together? And I'd always say to myself, well, if you don't start, you're not going to get there. So you better start doing something. So I would just jab at it, and it ended up, I like it. I think it's cool, and it hangs down, about below your bust line for sure. But this black gal came up and said, won't you make another one? I looked at her, I said, no way. I said, oh, it was just so hard. And anyhow, the signs, and I remember being at I guess it's FedEx now, but I still think of it as Kinko's, getting the signs made. And this lady came up and asked me what I was doing. And I had the orange paper and the yellow paper, and I was Xeroxing, and then I would blow it up and then I make it smaller, and I was going back and forth. So anyhow, it was a lot of work as well, but I got there. So anyhow, thank you for coming. And I hope you watch the first part and you bear with and do the second part as well. This is my work and the story is in my book. So that's it, folks. All righty.